Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Welcome to The Ray Taylor Show, where I bring you the reviews on the latest movies and TV shows, as well as classic and foreign films. I'm your host, Ray Taylor, and I'll be talking about all things film and television on this podcast. Whether you're looking for a new show to binge or want to know if that blockbuster is worth the trip to the theater, or just want to hear my thoughts on a classic or foreign film, I've got you covered. So join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for new reviews, and let's dive into the world of film together, and television sometimes. On this episode, I'm talking about the newest film from the one and only James Cameron, that being Avatar: The Way of Water. Came out last year, 2022. Long awaited sequel to Avatar. As I said, directed by James Cameron, also co-written by James Cameron, also written with Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver. Stars Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldaña, Sigourney Weaver, Stephen Lang, Kate Winslet, among many others. Jake Sully lives with his newfound family formed on the extrasolar moon Pandora. Once a familiar threat returns to finish what was previously started, Jake must work with Neytiri and the army of the Na'vi race to protect their home. I definitely liked this movie more than the first film. I enjoy both Avatar movies, despite the fact they are problematic aspects of the first film. I would say there's similar problematic aspects to this one, but overlooking that, I enjoyed both movies, but I enjoyed this one quite a bit more than the first film as I rewatched the first film, talked about it, reviewed it last week, and then watched this one immediately after because, I wanted to refresh on the whole. I hadn't watched the first Avatar film since watching it in theaters 15 years ago, so wanted to refresh and get ready for the sequel that just got released on Disney Plus as well as HBO Max, or I guess they call it Max now. I think the visuals got even better. The look and textures of the people, the Na'vi, as it were, are even better. There's a lot of underwater stuff in this one that I really enjoyed. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. It's also a lot of new characters. It really opens up the story, not only opening up the world of Pandora, but also opening up the story, adding a lot of new characters, adding a lot of new things. So I enjoyed what this movie did. Not my favorite James Cameron film, which I will be ranking my top 5 James Cameron films on Sunday's podcast called Top 5, which you can subscribe to in its own feed. Those come out every Sunday, but I'll be ranking my top 5 favorite James Cameron films, which it was a blast going through and rewatching all of his films, some for the very first time. But yeah, this movie, really enjoyed it. As I said, visuals improved in this one. Even more realistic, actually look and feel very like actual thing, doesn't look as much. And the first movie was great as well, as James Cameron is known to push the limits of technology for his films. And it's noticeable in this film that it even got even better. The motion capture stuff that he uses, but they actually made them feel and look even more realistic, which I think with the textures and shading and all that kind of stuff really works in this movie. So there's a lot of great visual moments in this, right? A lot of underwater and sea creatures, new kinds of creatures in this movie. Also new kinds of Na'vi as they go to more of like their kind of they leave their tribe because to avoid them being attacked, because they're out to try and track down Jake Sully. So to protect their village, they go and hide out at a different village. And these new Na'vi are they're interesting, like kind of Polynesian, Maori type of a look. with tattoos. They're like their skin, like the Na'vi have like I don't even know how to describe it, but the look on their skin makes it look like they have tribal tattoos. And there's even like one of the whale creatures has like it's kind of crazy, but I enjoy the new type of Na'vi. Definitely more sea Na'vi. They have like broad, flat arms, kind of like oars in a lot of ways. So interesting design and look to them as well. And as always, as James Cameron is great at doing great action set pieces in this movie. Very entertaining fight scenes to exciting battle sequences. Just whether it's small hand-to-hand combat or just big battle sequences. Always great action set pieces with a James Cameron film. Where the first film, there was a lot more of the battle in the air, a lot of flying ships. This one was far more of like a naval battle, a lot of kind of water ships, boats, and things like that. So very much a water-themed type of a movie, which is another aspect of James Cameron, somebody that absolutely loves and is obsessed with water, deep sea exploration, whether it was the research he did with the Titanic film or even The Abyss, which takes place primarily underwater, deep sea exploration. So James Cameron, I think, really kind of his love of water really shines through in this film and allows us to get a whole new world explored, new part of Pandora that we never saw before. So all that stuff I really enjoyed. They did some really interesting stuff with the story in this one, interesting ways they brought characters back that had died in the first film. So very inventive ways of kind of bringing those characters back in very new and interesting ways. Also, there's a lot of kids in this film, which allows it to open it up to new characters. And generally, in James Cameron films, I'm not a fan of the kids. I don't think he's necessarily gets good performances from kids. I think the kids in a lot of the films that have kids in them from James Cameron are like the weakest part. Recently, obviously, rewatched all of James Cameron's films for the top 5 episode that I'm going to be doing. And Terminator 2, it's been so long since I'd watched Terminator 2, but it's kind of surprised at how much I don't like John Connor in Terminator 2. He is definitely the weakest part of that movie. Very cheesy, very corny. Same thing with Aliens. The kid in Aliens, not quite as annoying as the kids might be, but definitely an aspect of that movie that I didn't like. But in this movie, I think it worked. I think he was able to get good performances. Obviously, there's a lot of voice acting. Well, maybe. I guess they did motion capture. But I enjoyed the kids, which is good because the kids in this movie are a big part of this movie. They are by far a bigger focus than Jake Sully is. So, despite having kids, usually a negative when it comes to James Cameron movies, good stuff in this one. Good performances. The movie was far more focused on the kids in this one, and also made the complexity of the story more interesting as people's motivations kind of change or their reasoning for doing certain things is very difficult. So I enjoyed the complexity that these kids and the story of this film. I enjoyed both of those aspects. Whether it's like their motivations or alliances that they form and break throughout this movie, how things kind of change. I enjoyed the writing of this movie. I think was far improved, I would say, than the first movie, while also hitting a lot of the same beats. And it also, in this movie, shows kind of the blending of the cultures as the humans that stuck around and the Na'vi are kind of working together. This is definitely probably like this is almost takes place 15 years in the future, 15 years past the first movie, which in real life it's been 15 years. But so kind of an interesting, a nice aspect that the time in between the first film and this film is represented in the characters and how old the oldest kids are. So I enjoyed all that stuff. Let's take a quick break from this episode to talk about, are you a fan of art, movies, and all things entertainment? Then you need to check out youtube.com/inspired disorder. Our page is jam-packed with all kinds of great content, including making of videos of the many faces, an ongoing art series of abstract ink paintings. But that's not all. We also feature daily episodes from The Ray Taylor Show, a podcast that brings you movie reviews, TV show reviews, episode recaps, opinions on news and entertainment, and much more. There's also a weekly diary and top 5 movie rankings of a variety of categories. And if that wasn't enough, we've also got how-to videos covering all kinds of topics. So why wait? Head on over to youtube.com/inspired disorder and start exploring the amazing content we have to offer. And now back to the show. I do want to get into spoilers, so warning for spoilers. I want to talk about specifics of this movie, but I did enjoy this movie. Not as much, still similar problematic aspects of the first film, which I'm not necessarily going to get into those. There definitely are going to be some aspects of this that I will be critical of, but I want to get into specifics of this movie, so spoilers from here on out. So this movie, so they bring back, right, Grace doesn't necessarily come back, but definitely Sigourney Weaver as a voice actor comes back. It's very kind of interesting how that character is almost reborn in this movie, as well as the Colonel, how he was backed up and now is in a Na'vi body, an Avatar body. So I enjoyed kind of those aspects of it. Again, pretty effortless for the Colonel, like literally trains himself how to do all these things. So even more ridiculous than how effortless Jake Sully was able to do a lot of the things when he became a Na'vi, just kind of effortlessly doing things that no Na'vi have ever been able to do. In a very similar way, the Colonel just kind of effortlessly learns how to do everything on his own. He didn't even need the Na'vi to teach him or train him how to do things. So some marks against it as far as having to overlook the unbelievable aspects of it. But the Grace character, very interesting, right? They saved the Avatar body that Grace used, right? Because she died in the first film, but they tried to transfer her into the, right? They had this thing at the end of the first film where they were able to use their magic tree to transfer people into their Avatar bodies permanently. Jake Sully was successful in doing that. They tried to do it with Grace, and it didn't work, right? But her spirit was, I assume, within the magic tree, which I don't remember what they call the magic tree, but so what I assume, they never fully explain, but her avatar became pregnant, and the child that came out somehow, even though it's just like a blank, it's like there's nobody in the avatar body anymore because Grace died, but gave birth to this girl who's played by Sigourney Weaver, but has like this ability to communicate with things in a way that nobody else can. She almost has like magical abilities to like communicate and control other creatures. Like the interface and compatibility she has is beyond the abilities of a lot of other people. But then there's also the rumor or the speculation that maybe she had sex with the other scientist guy while they were in avatar bodies and he impregnated her. At least that's what the kids kind of speculate how she came to be, but I think it's more of like a reincarnation or a rebirth where the tree impregnated her in some way, and when she was born, she was kind of the blending of grace as well as the tree itself. I don't know. But an interesting character, right? It's a character that has like abilities that nobody else does. Again, it's a white character that has these magical abilities. But whatever. It gets messy. It gets messy. But an interesting character nonetheless. You have one of the kids was too young when they kicked out all the humans, when they kicked the corporation out. There was one kid who was too young to be put in cryo, so they stayed and kind of grew up feral. This kid, Spider, which I kind of enjoy that kid. So you have this other character that's like a human but raised around the Na'vi. Kind of an interesting kind of character in himself. Always kind of considered an alien by the Na'vi because like never really was accepted. You know, always kind of like this outcast because he's one of the only humans that was growing up there. Interesting. How they bring back the colonel and the other soldiers, and they're all, for whatever reason, even when they're in their avatar bodies, they decide to get tattoos, which is kind of cheesy, but whatever. At least it kind of, they're easily identifiable to know which ones are the soldiers because they have the tattoos, and not like tattoos like the other Na'vi do that look like tribal tattoos. They're just like your generic military type tattoos. And how they explain it of him being quote unquote backed up, right? So kind of introducing that technology, I guess, that they were, retconning in some way, able to come up with this technology that they were backed up before and they were put into these avatar bodies. Interesting way to bring them back. And him going to seek revenge on Jake Sully, obviously. But the sad part, that was, okay, a hurdle you had to get over was kind of the effortless nature of this colonel learning how to do everything that the Na'vi does, just teaching himself. That was kind of ridiculous. The Sky People are back, and they have like this city at this point. Far more infrastructure as they're doing their stuff, mining their unobtainium or whatever. And they have new mechs that are more like slimline mechs, almost making the humans Na'vi size in a lot of ways, like the height and capabilities of the Na'vi. So it's another thing that this movie does where the Na'vi are able to interface with other biological things. The avatars themselves are kind of like these biological mechs that humans are able to interface with in a similar way as the humans are interfacing with these robotic mechs. Interesting. It's I enjoyed the newer technology or whatever that the humans had, and like an interesting way to show how these humans are doing similar things in these mechanical bodies that are the same size and build of a Na'vi, but without actually using an avatar body or whatever. And of course, Spider is the kid of the colonel, which is like, okay. But that ends up that's one of the difficult aspects of this film, where it's like his alliances to his friends is clearly there, but then he also at one point saves his dad. So he becomes a very complex character, Spider does, because at one point he, doesn't want his dad to die, but he's also grew up with Jake Sully and their kids. But then also in this movie finds out that Neytiri is the one who killed his dad. So there's that. There's a lot of complex feelings going on with the Spider kid, which I found to be interesting addition to this movie. Makes it kind of the difficult nature of it, I think, will probably be something that will come out in the future, right? I mean, just the fact that he saved his dad at the end of this movie is enough to be like the fact that he is still alive, the Colonel is still alive for the second film. It will be enough for it to be a very difficult situation. The Water Tribe is very cool. Their look and their arms being wide and all that stuff, I enjoyed that. The underwater scenes, very impressive, very just as impressive as all the bioluminescent stuff from the first movie. And of course, there's like underwater dragons, which look very similar in a lot of ways to the dragons that they flew with in the first movie. Them learning to do breathing exercises and stuff. The kids learning to be able to stay underwater for a lot longer. I enjoyed all that stuff. Did not like the Colonel, kind of effortlessly, said that many times. There's these underwater angel wings. There's like these animals underwater that kind of attach to your back and look like angel wings but give you oxygen. Very interesting characters, like super interesting characters, also reminiscent of The Abyss, which is one of my favorite James Cameron films. And of course there's an underwater spirit tree, so they have their own spirit tree as well. Let's take a quick break from this episode because I want to talk about, are you looking to add some unique and expressive artwork to your home, office, or wardrobe? Look no further than the Many Faces series by Ray Taylor. That's me. These abstract paintings on paper explore the endless possibilities of the human face, capturing unique expressions of emotion, mood, tone, and energy in just a few minimal features. Now you can bring these stunning and thought-provoking pieces into your own space with high-quality prints and t-shirts, featuring designs from the Many Faces series. Or take home a one-of-a-kind original piece for your collection. Don't miss out on this opportunity to add some original and expressive artwork to your home, office, or wardrobe. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com to browse and purchase original artworks, prints, and t-shirts from the Many Faces series today. And now, back to the show. A lot of water battle, obviously, in this one instead of the Way of Water, clearly in the title. Little clue instead of the air battles that was and land battles that were in the first film. A lot more focused on the kids. Crazy final battle, as these movies tend to have. The whale creature being able to get revenge, and the bond that whale creature has with one of the kids. I enjoyed that a lot as well. Spider sabotaging the ship was an amazing moment, right? There's like, I like Spider, and I don't like, obviously, that he saved his dad, but it makes sense that he would want to, right? And it makes sense that he would have kind of these, it makes sense that he would kind of be flip-flopping back and forth with like helping the people that he grew up with, but also trying to do the least amount of possible to save his dad. So it's a very interesting character. The final fight between Jake and the Colonel while the ship is sinking and rotating is amazing. Like it's almost reminiscent of Titanic, but with amazing fight scenes. And also getting him in a legitimate rear naked choke, which is so rare in movies that they usually do the move wrong in movies, but that it looked like it was legitimate rear naked choke instead of like it was just after some like BS pro wrestling leg hold. So it was nice that they actually incorporated some legitimate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the movie, which I always appreciate that. I talked about on Monday, reviewed Extraction 2, and in the first Extraction movie, there was some legitimate Jiu-Jitsu as well in that, which I always appreciate that because in movies, they will usually do it wrong. It will look more like professional wrestling, which is kind of bullshit, versus what you would see in MMA. So I enjoyed that fight scene at the end. One daughter's special abilities to kind of control the different sea creatures is kind of great. Almost like she has the Force, but way better than just the Force. Spider saving his dad, which makes no sense. Although I don't believe at all that the Colonel would survive. There's no way he would have survived. He was choked out underwater, right? He was rear naked choke, right, which cuts off the blood to your brain, right? It removes oxygen from your brain, right, and knocks you out. You can breathe, but you're unconscious. But he's underwater, so he couldn't breathe. He would have drowned. And he was out. He was knocked out for a very long time underwater before Spider's able to get him up. There's no way he would have survived. But whatever. Because that entire swim to the surface, he had no air. And he would have, like, his body would have kept trying to breathe, and he would have just been underwater. So he just would have, it's not like he was awake to know to hold his breath or to even have a breath to hold anyway. Just doesn't make any sense. But whatever. He saves him. Fine. Okay. So in the same way, it's similar to Avatar, the animated series, this movie, which is kind of interesting, which I love. Avatar, the Last Airbender, great animated TV show. Interested to see what they do with these live action stuff. Like, there's a whole Avatar universe that's going to be coming out, which I appreciate. Did not like the M. Night Shyamalan, but there's reasons why that turned out as bad as it did. But it's interesting how this movie, one, took the name Avatar, but is also similar in, like, in the animated series, this kid is learning different abilities from different tribes, right? Learning from the water tribes, the fire, the earth, the different elements or whatever. And it's the same thing in this one, right? He learned, Jake and the kids obviously grew up, knew about the flying dragons, so they're very educated on air. They're airbenders. And then in this movie, learning all the abilities of the water tribe. And then maybe the next one, they're going to be fire or earth. Who knows? But very interesting how it seems like that the element aspect of this movie, similarities to the Avatar animated series. You know, going to different communities to learn new abilities and being accepted by these new communities also. I enjoy that. So I like this movie a lot, right? I liked it more than the first movie. I think the story feels similar in some ways, but just bigger than the first movie with the addition of the kids and the new Na'vi tribe. Also, all the new creatures that are in this movie opens up the story and the world even more. Also interesting to see how the abilities, the humans' ability to quote unquote back up their consciousness kind of permanently into an avatar, how that could, play into future movies. Like, even if the Colonel died, I would imagine, as long as they have another avatar body, they could use that same backup and just put him into another body. So Spider didn't necessarily need to even save him, which doesn't make sense that he would have survived that anyway. But at least that kind of shows, it provides some complexity to the Spider character. And also the new type of a character being reborn, and having kind of magical abilities, right? It kind of adds a lot of fun new elements to the reality of the story, which I appreciate. And in many ways, many ways, I enjoyed it more than the first one. Also, visually, I think the technology has gotten even better, all that stuff. But I want to thank you for tuning into this episode of The Ray Taylor Show. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts of Avatar: The Way of Water. Don't forget to tune in every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for more movie and TV show reviews, and join the conversation by leaving a comment or rating on your favorite podcast platform over on youtube.com/inspireddisorder. Until next time, I see you.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.